The giant meeting hall on planet Zentara was filled with voices. 47 different alien species had come together for the most important meeting in 2,000 years. The air smelled strange, mixing the scents of different worlds and different beings who breathed different gases. Admiral Zixtal stood at the front of the room. His body was made of what looked like blue crystal, and when he spoke, his voice sounded like wind chimes in a storm. He pointed at the huge screen floating above them all. On the screen was Earth, a small blue and green ball spinning slowly in the darkness of space. For 2,000 years we have kept our promise, Admiral Zixtal said. His voice echoed through the hall, making some of the smaller aliens cover their hearing organs. The humans stayed in their part of space. We stayed in ours. The Treaty of Sol kept peace between us all. Captain Jake Morrison sat in the human section of the Great Hall. He was the only human there, wearing a simple blue uniform that looked plain compared to the fancy clothes and armor of the alien delegates around him. He seemed calm, almost bored, as if he was listening to someone read a grocery list instead of accusations of war crimes. Around him, aliens of every shape and size filled the curved rows of seats. Some looked like giant insects with too many eyes. Others were tall and thin like walking sticks. A few looked almost like humans but with strange colored skin or extra arms. They all stared at Captain Morrison with different kinds of eyes, but they all showed the same emotion: anger. Council Prime Vex Hari floated above them all on a throne that glowed with soft purple light. She was the leader of the Galactic Council, and her species looked like jellyfish made of starlight. When she spoke, her words appeared as glowing symbols in the air that everyone could understand in their own language. "The humans have broken their promise," she said, and the glowing words pulsed with each syllable. "They have built new homes on 17 different worlds. These worlds were not part of their allowed space. We told them to stop. They did not listen." Captain Morrison finally stood up. He was not very tall, and he moved slowly like he had all the time in the world. The thousands of alien eyes in the room focused on him. Some of the aliens leaned forward in their seats. Others made threatening gestures with claws, tentacles, or weapons. "Council Prime," Morrison said, his voice calm and respectful. "Those worlds were empty. Nobody lived there. Nobody had claimed them. We followed all the rules for settling new planets." A snake-like alien named Representative Kothmar rose from his seat. His body was as thick as a tree trunk and covered in scales that changed color when he was angry. Right now they were bright red. "Your rules do not matter, human," Kothmar hissed, his forked tongue flicking out with each word. "You agreed to stay in your cage. You have left your cage. This breaks the sacred Treaty of Sol." The hall erupted in noise. Aliens were shouting, growling, chirping, and making sounds that human ears could not properly hear. Some banged their fists, claws, or tentacles on their seats. Others waved weapons or what looked like weapons in the air. Through all of this noise and anger, Captain Morrison stood quietly, and slowly, a small smile began to form on his face. "Admiral," Zixtal raised his crystal arms high above his head. Light poured from his body, and gradually the hall became quiet again. When he was sure everyone was listening, he continued speaking. "The Galactic Council has made its decision," he announced. "The Treaty of Sol is broken. The humans have chosen war over peace. We hereby declare that a state of war now exists between the Galactic Council and the Human Coalition." This was the moment when Captain Morrison should have looked scared. This was when he should have begged for mercy, or gotten angry, or demanded to speak to his superiors. This was when any reasonable person would have realized that 46 alien species with advanced technology and massive fleets had just declared war on humanity. Instead, Captain Morrison began to laugh. It started as a small chuckle, the kind of sound someone makes when they hear a funny joke. But it grew louder and stronger until Morrison was laughing so hard that tears began to run down his face. He bent over, holding his stomach, and laughed like he had just heard the funniest thing in the entire universe. The hall became completely silent. Every alien stared at the laughing human with confusion and growing worry. This was not how anyone was supposed to react to a declaration of war. Council Prime Vex Hari's glowing symbols appeared in the air again. but they flickered as if she was having trouble controlling them. "Captain Morrison," she said, "do you think our declaration of war is funny?" Morrison wiped the tears from his eyes and tried to control his laughter. But every time he looked around the room at all the serious alien faces, he started laughing, again. Finally, he managed to speak. "Oh, Council Prime," he said, still smiling widely. "You have no idea how funny this is. I need to call Earth right away. This is going to be the best news they have heard in centuries." He pulled out a small communication device and pressed a button. The device beeped and then a woman's voice came from it, speaking in English. "Captain Morrison, this is Earth Command. What is your status?" Morrison looked around the room at all, the confused and angry aliens. His smile grew even wider. "Earth Command, this is Morrison. You are not going to believe this. The Galactic Council just declared war on us." There was a pause, and then the woman's voice came back, but now she sounded excited instead of professional. "Captain, did you say they declared war on us?" "After 2,000 years of peace, they actually declared war?" "That's right, Command. 46 species united against humanity. They want us to withdraw from our outer colonies within 7 days or face their combined fleets." Another pause and then something that made the aliens in the hall even more confused. From the communication device came the sound of cheering. Lots of people were cheering, laughing, and shouting with what sounded like joy. "Captain Morrison," the woman's voice said, and now she was clearly trying not to laugh herself. "Please tell the Galactic Council that we received their message. Tell them we said thank you." Morrison looked up at Council Prime Vexahari, who was floating above them, all with her jellyfish body pulsing with confused colors. "Council Prime," he said politely, "Earth says thank you for the declaration of war. We appreciate it very much." The silence in the hall was so complete that everyone could hear the soft humming of the life support systems. No one understood what was happening. No one understood why the humans were happy about being declared war upon. No one except Captain Morrison, who was still smiling as he put away his communication device. "If there's nothing else, Council Prime," he said, "I should return to my ship. Earth is going to want a full report, and I suspect we'll be quite busy for the next few days." As he walked toward the exit, every alien eye in the room followed him. They watched this small, ordinary human in his plain uniform walk calmly through their midst, still smiling, apparently unconcerned that the most powerful military alliance in the galaxy had just declared war on his species. Just before he reached the door, Captain Morrison stopped and turned back to face the assembled aliens. "Oh, and Council Prime," he said, "you might want to tell your fleets to be careful out there. Space can be dangerous." And with that, he left the hall, leaving behind thousands of confused and increasingly worried aliens who were beginning to wonder if they had made a terrible mistake. The emergency meeting room on Earth was packed with people. President Lisa Hamilton stood at the front, looking out at the crowd of government officials, military leaders, and scientists who had rushed to the Capitol as soon as Captain Morrison's message arrived. Everyone was talking at once, but they were not panicking. Instead, they seemed excited like children who had just been told Christmas was coming early. President Hamilton raised her hand, and the room became quiet. She was a small woman with gray hair and kind eyes, but when she spoke, everyone listened. She had been president for 8 years, and in that time she had always been honest with the people. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, her voice carrying clearly through the room, "I have just received confirmation from Captain Morrison. After 2,000 years of enforced peace, the Galactic Council has officially declared war on humanity." The room should have filled with gasps of fear and cries of worry. Instead, people began to smile. Some even clapped their hands together. General Ryan Clark, the head of Earth's defense forces, actually laughed out loud. "They really did it," he said, shaking his head in amazement. "After all these years, they finally gave us the excuse we've been waiting for." President Hamilton nodded. "The aliens have given us 7 days to pull back from our outer colonies. They expect us to run away scared, just like our ancestors did 2,000 years ago, when they first forced us to sign the Treaty of Sol." She paused and looked around the room at all the eager faces. "But there's something very important that the Galactic Council has forgotten about humanity. Something they should have remembered before they made their threats. Dr. Amy Foster, who was in charge of all the human colonies, stood up from her seat. She was a tall woman with brown hair and intelligent eyes. "Madam President, our colonies have been ready for this day for decades. Every man, woman, and child living on our outer worlds knows exactly what to do. We've been practicing for this moment their entire lives." General Clark walked to the front of the room and touched a button on the wall. Suddenly, the air filled with floating pictures made of light. The pictures showed Earth and all the human colonies, but they looked different than what most people had seen before. "The Galactic Council thinks they're dealing with the same weak humans who agreed to the Treaty of Sol 2,000 years ago," Clark said. "They have no idea what we've become while they weren't paying attention." The floating pictures changed to show huge shipyards hidden inside asteroids. Then they showed underground military bases on dozens of different worlds. Finally, they showed what looked like normal space stations, but when the pictures zoomed in, everyone could see that they were actually massive weapons platforms disguised as civilian buildings. "For 2,000 years, Clark continued, we've been the galaxy's favorite joke. The peaceful humans who tell funny stories, write pretty poems, and avoid fights whenever possible. The aliens never bothered to check what we were doing when we weren't telling jokes." A man in the back of the room raised his hand. It was Dr. Carlos Martinez, the head of strategic development. He was an older man with a beard and glasses who always carried a tablet computer with him. "Dr. Martinez," President Hamilton said, "what are our current military numbers?" Martinez looked at his tablet and smiled. "Madam President, our conservative estimates show that our fleet is now 4 times larger than any single species in the Galactic Council. While they've been sitting around feeling superior for 2,000 years, we've been building, learning, and preparing." "And our defensive capabilities?" the President asked. "Every single human world is now effectively a fortress," Martinez replied. "We've had 2,000 years to prepare for this day, and we've used every single minute wisely. Every colony that looks like a peaceful farming community is actually a military base. Every cargo ship that appears to be carrying grain or manufactured goods is actually a warship in disguise." President Hamilton looked around the room. Everyone was leaning forward, in their seats, eager to hear more. "Dr. Rodriguez, what about our technology?" Dr. Elena Rodriguez was the head of the science division. She was a young woman with black hair who had spent her entire career developing new weapons and defense systems. "Madam President," she said, standing up, "while the aliens have been content with their old technology, we've never stopped innovating. Our ships are faster, our weapons are more powerful, and our defenses are stronger than anything the Galactic Council has ever seen." "General," Clark nodded in agreement. "The aliens made the mistake of assuming that peace made us weak. They forgot that there's a big difference between choosing not to fight and being unable to fight." President Hamilton walked to the center of the room. "Ladies and gentlemen, the Galactic Council is about to learn something very important about humanity. They're about to remember why, before the Treaty of Sol, humans were considered the most dangerous species in the galaxy." She touched another button on the wall, and the floating pictures changed to show a map of all human space. Every colony, every hidden base, every disguised warship was marked with a glowing dot. There were thousands and thousands of dots. "The aliens think they're attacking helpless farmers and merchants," Hamilton continued. "They don't realize that every human farmer can also pilot a fighter ship. Every human merchant can also operate a weapons system. Every human teacher can also coordinate a defense grid." General Clark stepped forward. "Madam President, what are your orders?" Hamilton smiled, and for the first time since the meeting began, she looked like the grandmother she was instead of the leader of humanity. "Send a message to all colonies. Operation Homecoming is now active. It's time to show the galaxy who we really are." The room erupted in cheers and applause. People hugged each other and shook hands. Some even danced a little. After 2,000 years of pretending to be harmless, humanity was finally going to reveal its true strength. "General Clark," Hamilton said when the noise died down, "how long before our fleets are ready?" "They're already ready, Madam President. They've been ready for decades. We just need to drop the disguises and show the galaxy what we've been hiding." Dr. Foster raised her hand. What about the civilians on our outer colonies? Hamilton's smile grew wider. Dr. Foster, there are no civilians on our outer colonies. Everyone out there is military. They've just been pretending to be farmers and shop owners. As the meeting broke up and people began to leave to carry out their orders, President Hamilton stood alone for a moment, looking at the map of human space. She thought about her grandchildren who lived on one of the outer colonies. They had grown up thinking they were just normal kids going to school and playing games. They had no idea that their school was actually a training facility, and their games were actually military exercises. She thought about Captain Morrison, still on his way back from the alien meeting. He had done his job perfectly, acting confused and weak while the aliens made their threats. Now it was time for the rest of humanity to do their jobs. The aliens had made one critical mistake in their planning. They assumed that peace had made humanity soft and weak. They were about to learn the truth about humans. Peace had not made them weak. Peace had given them time to become strong. And now, after 2,000 years of preparation, they were ready to show the galaxy what humans could really do when they stopped pretending to be harmless. Admiral Zixtal stood on the command bridge of his massive warship, the Retribution. Around him, the combined fleet of the Galactic Council stretched out in all directions like a metal forest floating in space. 2,000 ships from 47 different worlds had come together to form the largest military force the galaxy had seen since the last war. The Admiral's crystal body glowed with satisfaction as he looked at the tactical display. Every species had sent their best ships and their most experienced crews. The Serpentine Alliance had brought their fast attack vessels. The Hegemony had contributed their heavy battleships. Even the Peaceful Botanical Collective had sent their defensive platforms. Status report. Admiral Zixtal commanded his tactical officer, a six-armed creature named Lieutenant Grixmore. Lieutenant Grixmore consulted his instruments with 3 of his arms, while the other 3 worked at different control panels. All ships report ready for combat, Admiral. Long-range sensors show the human colonies are still there. No signs of evacuation or military preparation. Admiral Zixtal frowned, creating tiny fractures in his crystal face. 7 days had passed since they delivered the ultimatum to the humans. 7 days for them to pack up their illegal colonies and return to their designated space. But according to the sensors, nothing had changed. Perhaps they are frozen with fear, suggested Commander Hevtok, a tall, thin alien whose species looked like walking trees. Their colonies are mostly civilian populations after all. They probably don't know how to organize an evacuation. Or, maybe they're too stupid to understand the danger, added another officer. This brought laughter from several crew members on the bridge. Everyone knew that humans were considered one of the less intelligent species in the galaxy. Admiral Zixtal raised a crystal hand for silence. Maintain battle formation and advance. We'll begin with the outermost system, New Haven. A demonstration of our power should make them come to their senses. The massive fleet activated their faster-than-light drives and disappeared into hyperspace. 3 hours later, they emerged at the edge of the New Haven system, ready to show the humans the price of defying the Galactic Council. What they found there made no sense at all. The system was full of activity, but not the kind they expected. Instead of panic and ships fleeing in terror, they saw massive cargo vessels moving calmly between planets. Construction ships were working on orbital platforms as if nothing unusual was happening. Civilian traffic continued to flow normally between the different worlds in the system. "This is impossible," muttered Lieutenant Grixmore, checking his instruments with all 6 arms. "They act like they don't even know we're here." "Admiral," called the communications officer from across the bridge, "we're receiving a transmission from New Haven Control." "Put it on the main screen," Admiral Zixtal ordered. The image that appeared made the entire bridge crew stare in confusion. A middle-aged human woman with short brown hair and a friendly smile looked back at them. She wore a simple gray uniform and appeared completely relaxed, as if she was greeting old friends instead of a hostile invasion fleet. "Welcome to New Haven, Admiral Zixtal," the woman said cheerfully. "I'm Director Kate Sullivan, administrator of this system. We've been expecting you." Admiral Zixtal felt his crystal body temperature rise with anger. Director Sullivan, I am here to enforce the Galactic Council's ultimatum. You have violated the Treaty of Sol by establishing colonies in forbidden space. You must evacuate immediately. Director, Sullivan's smile grew even wider, like someone who had just heard a wonderful joke. Oh, Admiral, I think there's been a terrible misunderstanding. We're not evacuating at all. In fact, we're having a welcoming party for you. Would you like to see? Before Admiral Zixtal could ask what she meant, every alarm on the bridge began, sounding at once. Lieutenant Grixmore's 6 arms moved frantically over his controls as new contacts appeared on the tactical display. Admiral, Grixmore said, his voice rising with panic, I'm detecting massive energy signatures throughout the system. Those cargo ships we thought were civilian vessels. They're not cargo ships at all. The main display screen split to show multiple views of the New Haven system. What had looked like ordinary merchant vessels suddenly opened up to reveal weapon systems that were larger and more advanced than anything the Galactic Fleet possessed. Orbital platforms that had appeared to be simple construction projects unfolded like metal flowers to show defensive systems that could destroy entire fleets. Impossible, whispered Commander Hevtok. Those readings can't be correct. Director Sullivan's voice continued cheerfully from the speakers. You see, Admiral, we've had 2,000 years to prepare for this day. Every human colony is what you might call a wolf in sheep's clothing. We learned a long time ago that the best defense is one that doesn't look like a defense at all. The tactical display continued to update as more and more hidden weapons revealed themselves. What had appeared to be cities on the planet's surface opened up to show massive defensive installations. Mining facilities turned out to be underground, military bases. Even the seemingly harmless space traffic was now showing weapon signatures. But here's the real surprise, Director Sullivan continued, and her voice carried a note of pride. We're not alone out here. Space around the Galactic Fleet began to shimmer and twist as new ships emerged from hyperspace. But these weren't like any ships the aliens had ever seen before. They were sleek and deadly looking, with curves and angles that seemed to bend light around them. And there were so many of them. Admiral Zixtal watched in growing horror as his tactical display filled with red dots representing enemy vessels. The human fleet surrounded his forces in a perfect sphere, with ships above, below, and on all sides. Admiral, Lieutenant Grixmore reported, his voice shaking. I count 3,000 human vessels. They have us completely surrounded. And sir, every one of their ships is larger and more heavily armed than our best battleships. This is not possible, Admiral Zixtal said, but even as he spoke the words, he knew they were true. The humans had somehow built a fleet that outnumbered and outgunned the combined might of 47 species. Director Sullivan's image reappeared on the main screen. She was still smiling, but now there was something different in her eyes. Something that made Admiral Zixtal's crystal body grow cold with fear. Admiral, she said, her voice still pleasant and friendly, you came here expecting to find helpless farmers and merchants. Instead, you found something else entirely. Every human in this system has been training for this moment their entire lives. Every ship you see was built in secret. Every weapon system was designed specifically to defend our homes. She paused, letting her words sink in. Now, you have a choice to make. You can surrender your fleet and return home to tell the Galactic Council that humans are not the weak species you thought we were. Or you can try to fight us and discover exactly what 2,000 years of human military innovation looks like. Admiral Zixtal looked around his bridge at his crew. They were all staring at him, waiting for orders. But what orders could he give? His fleet was outnumbered 3-1 by ships that were clearly superior to his own. Every tactical advantage belonged to the humans. What do you want? He finally asked. Director Sullivan's smile returned to its original friendliness. We want you to go home, Admiral. We want you to tell the Galactic Council that humanity is ready to renegotiate the Treaty of Sol. We're not asking to be your subjects anymore. We're asking to be your equals. And if we refuse? For the first time since the conversation began, Director Sullivan's smile disappeared. Then you'll discover why humans were once considered the most dangerous species in the galaxy. And Admiral, I promise you, that's not a lesson you want to learn the hard way. The bridge of the Retribution fell silent except for the quiet hum of life support systems. Admiral Zixtel realized that everything the Galactic Council thought they knew about humans was wrong. They weren't weak. They weren't helpless. They had been playing a game that lasted 2,000 years, and they had just revealed their winning hand. Fleet Admiral Ben Carter stood on the bridge of his flagship, the EDS Determination. Around him, his crew worked quietly and efficiently, like musicians playing a song they had practiced for decades. Through the large viewing windows, he could see the alien fleet hanging in space, surrounded by human ships on all sides. Admiral Carter was not a tall man, and his gray hair and lined face showed his age, but his eyes were sharp and alert, and when he spoke, everyone listened. He had spent 40 years preparing for this moment, and now that it was finally here, he felt surprisingly calm. "Status report, Commander Hayes," he said to his tactical officer. Commander Linda Hayes was a young woman with red hair and quick hands. She had been born on one of the outer colonies, and had grown up knowing that someday she might have to defend her home. Like every human child in the colonies, she had learned to operate weapon systems before she learned to drive a car. 47 different ship types in the alien fleet, Admiral, she reported. Their technology appears to be essentially unchanged from 2,000 years ago. While we've been advancing, they've been standing still. Casualties from our initial deployment? 0, sir. They haven't fired a single shot. Admiral Zixtal seems to be having trouble processing what he's seeing. Admiral Carter nodded and touched a button on his chair. "Open a channel to Director Sullivan on New Haven." The face of the colony director appeared on the main screen. She still looked calm and cheerful, as if entertaining unwelcome guests was something she did every day. "Admiral Carter," she said with a warm smile. "Wonderful to see you. Our alien visitors seem a bit overwhelmed by our hospitality. Any word from the other colonies, Kate?" "Oh, yes," Director Sullivan replied. And now her smile carried a hint of satisfaction. "Similar scenarios are playing out across all 17 systems. It seems that when you spend 2,000 years preparing for war while pretending to be harmless, farmers and shopkeepers, you can create quite a few surprises." Commander Hayes looked up from her instruments. "Admiral, I'm receiving status reports from all human fleets. Total deployment is now 8,000 vessels. We have every alien ship, surrounded simultaneously across all contested systems." Admiral Carter allowed himself a small smile. "And the aliens still haven't figured out how we manage this?" "No, sir," Hayes replied. "I don't think they understand the concept of long-term planning, or the idea that an entire species could keep a secret for 2,000 years. Admiral Carter opened a communication channel to the alien fleet. "Admiral Zixtal, this is Fleet Admiral Carter of the Human Defense Forces. I think it's time we had a serious conversation." The image of the crystal alien appeared on screen. Admiral Zixtal's body was flickering with different colors, which Admiral Carter knew meant he was experiencing strong emotions. Fear, confusion, and anger all mixed together in the alien's crystalline features. "This is impossible," Zixtal said, his voice crackling with static. "Our intelligence reports showed only civilian populations in these systems. Farmers, merchants, teachers, children. Where did this fleet come from?" Admiral Carter leaned back in his chair and spoke in a conversational tone, as if he was explaining something to a curious child. "Your intelligence was absolutely correct, Admiral. We are farmers, merchants, and teachers. The woman you've been speaking with, Director Sullivan, taught elementary school for 15 years before she became a colony administrator. Commander, Hayes here was a crop specialist before she joined my tactical staff." He gestured around his bridge at the other crew members. "Lieutenant Park over there used to run a restaurant. Chief Engineer Rodriguez was a construction worker. Weapons Officer Johnson owned a small bookstore." Admiral Zixtal's colors shifted to deep purple, which indicated confusion. "But your ships, your weapons, your military coordination. This level of organization takes decades to achieve." "Actually, it takes centuries," Admiral Carter corrected gently. "You see, Admiral, humans have a saying. If you want peace, prepare for war. For 2,000 years, every human has lived by those words." He stood up and walked closer to the communication screen. "Every human colony has shipyards hidden in asteroid belts. Every civilian transport can be converted to a warship in a matter of hours. Every peaceful settlement is actually a military base in disguise. We've been preparing for this day since the moment we signed the Treaty of Saul. Director Sullivan's voice joined the conversation from New Haven. The funny thing is, Admiral Zixtal, we actually are peaceful people. We really do prefer farming to fighting, building to destroying, exploring to conquering. But when someone threatens our families and our homes, she shrugged, and the gesture somehow looked more threatening than any weapon. Well, you're about to rediscover why humans were once considered the most dangerous species in the galaxy. Admiral Zixtal looked around his own bridge at his confused officers. Many of them were trying to understand how an entire species could have fooled them for so long. "What do you want from us?" he finally asked. Admiral Carter sat back down and folded, his hands in his lap. "It's very simple, Admiral. We want you to withdraw your fleets and return to the Galactic Council. Tell them that humanity would like to renegotiate the Treaty of Saul. We're ready to take our place as equals in the galaxy." Equals. Zixtal's colors shifted to bright red. "You deceived us for 2 millennia. You pretended to be weak when you were actually building the largest military force in the galaxy. How can anyone trust you?" "Because," Admiral Carter said patiently, "deception requires intent to harm. We never intended to harm anyone. We simply prepared to defend ourselves, if harm came to us. There's a big difference between being ready for war and wanting war." Commander Hayes looked up from her station. "Admiral, I'm receiving reports from our deep space reconnaissance. The aliens have more fleets positioned near our other colonies, but they're all in similar situations. Surrounded and outgunned." "Admiral," Carter nodded. "Admiral Zixtal, you should know that this conversation is being repeated at 16 other locations right now. Every galactic fleet that came to attack human colonies is having the same experience you're having." The alien admiral's crystal body dimmed as the full scope of the situation became clear to him. "You planned all of this." "For 2,000 years, Admiral Carter confirmed. Every detail, every contingency, every possible scenario. We've had a lot of time to think about this moment. And if we refuse your offer?" Admiral Carter's expression remained pleasant, but something in his eyes changed. It was subtle, but Admiral Zixtal recognized it immediately. It was the look of a predator deciding whether or not to strike. "Then you'll learn what 2,000 years of human military innovation actually looks like," Carter said quietly. "Admiral, your technology is the same as it was when you first defeated us. Ours has advanced beyond anything you can imagine. The question is, do you really want to find out how far we've come?" The bridge of the alien flagship fell silent. Admiral Zixtal stared at the human admiral, realizing that everything his species believed about humans was wrong. They weren't weak. They weren't simple. They were patient, clever, and far more dangerous than anyone had imagined. "I need time to consult with the Galactic Council," Zixtal said finally. Admiral Carter smiled. "Of course, Admiral. Take all the time you need. We've waited 2,000 years. We can wait a little longer." The Galactic Council chamber had never been so quiet. For the first time in 2,000 years, representatives from 47 species sat in complete silence, staring at the holographic reports floating above their seats. The images showed the same thing from 17 different star systems. Galactic fleets surrounded, outnumbered, and completely helpless against human forces that had appeared from nowhere. Admiral Zixtal stood at the center of the chamber, his crystal body flickering, with colors that showed his exhaustion and defeat. He had just finished giving his report, and the silence that followed was more frightening than any battle cry. Council Prime Vexhari floated above them all on her glowing throne, her jellyfish-like body pulsing with confused lights. When she finally spoke, her words appeared in the air as shimmering symbols that everyone could understand. "You are telling us," she said slowly, "that every human colony is actually a military fortress?" Admiral Zixtal nodded, sending tiny cracks through his crystal face. "Not just the colonies, Council Prime. Our deep space scouts have confirmed that Earth itself has been turned into the largest fortress in the galaxy. Hidden shipyards and asteroid belts, orbital defense platforms disguised as civilian space stations, weapon systems built into their cities. The entire human territory is one massive military installation, pretending to be a peaceful civilization. Representative Kothmar of the Serpentine Alliance coiled his long body nervously. His scales, which usually showed bright aggressive colors, had faded to a dull brown that indicated fear and uncertainty. "They deceived us for 2,000 years, he hissed. "How can we ever trust them again?" Captain Morrison sat in the human section of the chamber, but he was no longer alone. Fleet Admiral Carter sat beside him, along with President Hamilton and a dozen other human officials. The captain's earlier amusement had been replaced by a professional seriousness, but a small smile still played at the corners of his mouth. President Hamilton stood up. She was a small, elderly woman who looked like someone's grandmother, but when she spoke, her voice carried the authority of someone who spoke for an entire species. "Representatives of the Galactic Council," she began, "I want to address the question of trust that Representative Kothmar just raised." She walked to the center of the chamber, where everyone could see her clearly. "You say we deceived you, but I would argue that we simply prepared ourselves. When the Treaty of Sol was signed 2,000 years ago, humanity agreed to stay in our designated space and avoid conflict. We kept that agreement. We never attacked anyone. We never threatened anyone. We never broke a single rule." Admiral Carter stood and joined the president in the center of the chamber. "The Treaty of Sol said we had to stay in our space and remain peaceful. It never said we couldn't defend ourselves. It never said we couldn't build ships or develop technology. We simply did both of those things very quietly." Council Prime Vexhari's lights pulsed with confusion. "But why? Why spend 2,000 years preparing for a war you claimed you didn't want?" President Hamilton looked around the chamber at all the different alien species. Some looked like insects, others like plants, and still others like creatures from humanity's worst nightmares. But they all shared the same expression of bewilderment. "Because we learned something important from the last war," she said. "Peace is not the absence of the ability to fight. Peace is the choice not to use that ability. For 2,000 years we chose peace. When you declared war on us yesterday, you took away that choice." Dr. Martinez, the head of Human Strategic Development, activated a holographic display that filled the air above the chamber. The images showed human medical facilities, agricultural centers, energy production systems, and research laboratories. "For 2,000 years we've been trying to share our advances with the galaxy," he said. "We've developed medical technology that can extend lifespans for all species. We've created agricultural techniques that could feed every world in the galaxy. We've designed energy systems that could power entire civilizations for thousands of years." The holographic display changed to show the human colonies that the Galactic Council had been so concerned about. "These colonies that you thought were violations of the treaty, they were research stations. We were developing new technologies to benefit everyone. We tried to share this information through diplomatic channels for decades, but the Treaty of Sol limited our contact with the galactic community." President Hamilton nodded. "What we're proposing now is a new treaty, one based on mutual respect instead of fear. Humanity will share our technological advances with the entire galaxy. In return, we want full membership in the Galactic Council and the right to participate as equals." The chamber erupted in whispered conversations among the various species representatives. Some seemed interested, others appeared frightened, and a few looked angry. Finally, Council Prime Vexhari called for order. "And if we refuse this proposal?" she asked. Captain Morrison finally spoke, his voice carrying the quiet confidence of someone who held all the winning cards. "Then we'll return to our colonies and continue living our lives," he said simply. "We've proven that we can defend ourselves. We don't need the Galactic Council's permission to exist, but the galaxy will miss out on everything we could accomplish. Together." Admiral Carter stepped forward. "The choice is yours, Council Prime. You can have humanity as enemies, as allies, or as distant neighbors, but you can no longer have us as subjects." Representative Kothmar uncoiled from his seat. "What guarantee do we have that you won't use your superior technology to conquer us?" President Hamilton smiled, and for a moment she looked exactly like what she was, a grandmother who had spent her life taking care of others. "Representative Kothmar, We've had superior technology for centuries. If we wanted to conquer you, we would have done it already. The fact that we're sitting here talking instead of fighting should tell you everything you need to know about our intentions." The chamber fell silent again as the representatives considered her words. Finally, Council Prime Vexhari spoke. "The Galactic Council will need time to consider this proposal." "Of course," President Hamilton replied. "But while you're considering, I want you to think about one more thing." She gestured to Captain Morrison, who was still smiling. "Yesterday, when you declared war on humanity," Captain Morrison laughed. "Do you know why?" The alien representatives leaned forward, waiting for the answer. "Because for 2,000 years we've been waiting for someone to give us an excuse to show the galaxy who we really are. We're not the weak, frightened species. You remember from the last war, we're explorers, inventors, builders, and dreamers. But when someone threatens our families and our homes, we're also the most dangerous fighters in the galaxy." She paused, looking around the chamber one more time. "The question now is, do you want to be our friends, or do you want to find out just how dangerous we can be?" Captain Morrison stood up, still wearing that same small smile that had started this entire crisis. "Council Prime," he said, "there's an old human saying that I think applies here. Speak softly and carry a big stick. We've been speaking softly for 2,000 years. Yesterday, you forced us to show you the size of our stick." He looked around the chamber at all the worried alien faces. "The 2,000-year peace is over, just like you wanted. The question is, what kind of future do we build together now?" As the council session moved into private deliberations, one thing was clear to everyone present. The galaxy had just learned an important lesson about the difference between being peaceful and being helpless. And sometimes, the greatest strength comes from choosing when not to use your power. Humanity had laughed at the declaration of war not because they were foolish, but because they knew something the aliens had forgotten. True strength doesn't need to be displayed to be real. It just needs to be ready when the time comes.